You know, they tried to make it so that the belief in the conspiracy makes you somehow outside the norm, that you're a kook, that you're a conspiracy buff. They say he's a conspiracy buff. Do I believe in conspiracies? Nah. Do I believe powerful people would get together and plan for certain outcomes? Nah. Do I believe powerful interests would operate outside the law and maybe even kill people? Nah. Do I believe secret government agencies might feel the need to assassinate a person and cover it up? Nah. I think everything in America is open and clean and above board, and powerful people always play by the rules.
Hello, folks. Another night. I didn't have a lot of time to prep. That's okay. You can even see my hair is all fuzzy. Yeah. Well, just wanted to tell you that I am a conspiracy theorist. Looks like George Carlin was. Looks like a lot of smart people were conspiracy theorists. Heck, you know what? We're showcasing someone today called Dr. Kary Mullis. He's a conspiracy theorist, and wait till you hear all the things he's gonna say. And you're wondering, oh, Ebon, with the conspiracy theories and all this other stuff, you know, who cares if the CIA created the term conspiracy theorist? Of course they're gonna create the term conspiracy theorist because government doesn't lie. You know, even when they told you that, you know, they're conspiring against you, they didn't lie, did you? No, did they? No, they didn't. They told you straight up, this is a conspiracy. And then if you believe it, you're a conspiracy theorist. Isn't that funny? Okay. Let's get on with the topic. Let me share the screen. Join the audio. I gotta join the audio. Duh. That's what happens when I don't get set up. Alright, here is Dr. Kary Mullis. You can see here, this is website www.karymullis.com. Okay, let's say anyone could come up with their own website and say that they're a Nobel Prize winner in chemistry. All right, let's do Kary Mullis. Let's see what it says in Wikipedia. You believe in Wikipedia, or maybe you look at nobelprize.org. Obviously, nobelprize.org, they're not going to lie about people who won the Nobel Peace Prize. You know, anybody could come up with a site called www.nobelprize.org. Okay, obviously you know something I don't. Or how about you do your own research and look up Dr. Kary Mullis yourself? How about we just do that? Here you go. Biographical on Nobel Prize website. And it says, my father, Cecil Banks Mullis, and mother, formerly Bernice Alberta Barker, grew up in rural North Carolina in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. My dad's family had a general store, which I never saw. My grandparents on his side had already died before I started noticing things. My parents were close to me all during my childhood, and her father, Albert, stopped by to see me in a non-substantial form on his way out of this world in 1986. I was living in California. Pop died at 92. And wondering what was happening to me out in California, stopped by Kensington for a couple of days. My house afforded a view of San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge. His visit was an odd experience, not at all frightening. I have cultivated the curious things in life and found this one pleasant. Pop and I sat in the evenings in my kitchen, and I told him about the contemporary California world while we drank beer. I drank his for him, as it appeared that although he was very much there for me, he was not there at all for the beer. Many of my friends, when I told them of this, thought it fanciful. I think it more likely that much of our math today, and at least half of our physics, both of which I like. Until I was 5, my immediate family lived near my grandfather's farm where my mother had grown up, and with the exception of a few modern conveniences, had not changed a lot over the years. My grandfather milked several cows twice a day and supplied the neighbors with dairy products. He liked to go visiting around the country on Saturdays, and he also enjoyed the neighbors when they came by once a week with their empty milk jars. He walked them out to their cars and hung over the driver's side window until they drove off. The road was 2 tire tracks on well-mown grass between barbed wire fences, cows off to the right, alfalfa or sometimes corn to the left. Well, this is a long one. How about we get to the point? You guys can read this stuff. You guys know how to navigate the web. I thought it was going to be quick. Anyways, you can read about his biographical on Nobel Prize. And here's his own site. His about. Kary received the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1993 for his invention of the polymerase chain reaction, PCR. The process which Kary Mullis conceptualized in 1983 is hailed as one of the monumental scientific techniques of the 20th century. Wow, this guy's got credentials up the kazoo. What do you got, Mr. Conspiracy Theory Denial? Conspiracy Theory Denialist. I like that term. I'm inking it. It's mine. Alright. Belief, science, like nothing else among the institutions of mankind, grows like a weed every year. Art is subject to arbitrary fashion. Religion is inwardly focused and driven only to sustain itself. Law shuttles between freeing us and enslaving us. Here he gave a TED Talk, Sons of Sputnik. We'll play that, and that's going to be a long one. But I did, of course, a YouTube search. Now look at this. He's got one that says climatology is a joke by 1000 Frawley. And, we'll start kind of going back a bit. Because last night I did show something. And I'm going to show it again. Right click, edit. Open new page. Here we go. Oh my goodness. All right, here we go.
The first time I really questioned it, I was working on a project where we were measuring HIV in people's blood at this place called Specialty Laboratories in Santa Monica. I was just a consultant there. And I came in about 3 days a month, and we were working on that. And at some point, we needed to re-up our grant from the NIH to work on that, and I had to write it. And so the first line of that was, HIV is the probable cause of AIDS. And I wrote that, and then I said, well, I need a paper, some kind of scientific paper, to reference that statement, because when you make a statement like that, that's like a fact. You need to say, here's how come I know that, right? You put a little 1 if it's the first statement you've made, and then you put down at the bottom of the paper you have a 1, and you say, here's a paper by somebody that describes why that statement's true, right? And so I said, well, what's that? Let me think about, what is that paper? Who do I go to for that? And I looked around, I asked a couple of virologists at that company, and they said, no, you don't have to reference. I said, I have to reference that because I don't know where that came from. How do I know that? And it turned out that nobody knew it. There wasn't a scientific reference, like a paper that somebody had submitted with like experimental data in it and like logical discussion and said, here's how come we know that HIV is the probable cause of AIDS. There was nothing out there like that. Nothing.
Can you tell about your experience when you met Luc Montagnier for the first time and you questioned him about his, whether he had a reference for HIV, since he is the one who...
By the time I met Luc Montagnier, I had met a lot of AIDS researchers at meetings, and I had always gone up to them. If they talked like they knew about HIV and AIDS, I always went up to them afterwards and I said, where can I find a scientific reference that I can use for my... Remember I said I had a sentence there. It said HIV is the probable cause of AIDS, and I needed to have that backed up by something before I could write it and submit it. And I went around, I asked a whole lot of people. I said, well, the people, I can't find it. First I looked for it, just in like computer searching kind of stuff like that. But then I said, there's got to be somebody that knows this. So you go to experts and ask them. And so I asked all these people one after the other, and none of them had it. None of them. And I was getting really freaked about that. That's when I first started saying, they don't know. Nobody really knows. This whole thing is a big sham. It's ridiculous. But then finally Montagnier came to there was a special little seminar down in San Diego where an old friend of Robert Gallo's, Flossie Wongstall, was opening up a Department of AIDS research down at San Diego. They had lots of money involved, federal money. And they had Montagnier come there and give a talk, and after that they had a little wine and cheese thing, and I went over to Montagnier afterwards and I said, Dr. Montagnier, I can't find a reference, like I can't find a reference to go with the statement HIV is the probable cause of AIDS. I'm sure you can help me. And he knew that he probably should be able to help me, and he said, well, why don't you quote this new work, and by new he meant like something that came out this year, right? This new work about a virus that can kill monkeys, or I think it was not monkeys, it was like something related to monkeys, some kind of a baby, a little ape. And I had read that and I said, that didn't, it was like supposedly going to be a model system for studying AIDS, that somebody had figured out some kind of retrovirus that passing it back and forth between various mammals, they could finally put it into chimpanzees and kill them. And it killed them in about a week, and it didn't kill them in any, there was nothing like AIDS there, you know. It doesn't kill you in a week. It was just totally ridiculous. None of the symptoms were the same. And I said, well, you know, I read that paper, and I didn't see any connection between that and AIDS, and I don't think that would be a real. I wouldn't want to use that as a reference. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but I know he walked away. Oh, no! Before he told me about that paper, he said, "Why don't you use the NIH?" like the CDC report. And I said, well, I looked at that and that was not a scientific paper. And then he said, what about this other thing, this like paper that had just come out about a month before, and a lot of fanfare associated with that paper, but it was total crap. It was like, yeah, if you get $2 million, you can figure out how to kill a primate with a retrovirus. So what? Doesn't have anything to do with AIDS. It didn't look like AIDS, it didn't smell like AIDS, it wasn't AIDS. It was just like, got a retrovirus that can kill a chimpanzee, so what? So I didn't get any more out of him. He walked away after that. And the people standing around, by the way, who were his colleagues there, looked at him like they were thinking he should come up with a better answer than that. But he couldn't, and he just turned around and walked away.
Sorry for that.
I really thought he'd have an answer. I really did. I mean, that was my last, I was right at the edge of my faith in the system, but I thought Montagnier will know why he thinks HIV causes it, and he'll tell me. He'll say, because of this study, you know, but he didn't have that. None of those guys have that, and that's why they're so weird, you know. That's why they don't want dissent. They don't want people like me walking up and asking them those kind of questions, and they're willing to like go to great lengths to prevent that. They're out on a limb. I wouldn't want to be there with them.
All right, sorry about that. I was messing with my hotkeys, and I was looking at my my email and Twitter and chat. So one thing I wanted to say, all right, before we continue, people who watch my show, they know about Tech Move. I jokingly refer to him as Tech Smooth. His name is Jay Frankie. There are reports from Ryan Bannock and Shirley. She also said that he passed away, and I'd like to know more information on that. So send me, like Ryan Bannock was saying, it was his sister that said so. If there's like an obituary, I'd love to see the obituary. I'd love to just talk to, or at least message his sister, and just maybe do a compilation of like a tribute to all the times Tech Move has been on, and it's probably been on maybe 40 times or so. Most of the time it wasn't on video. There's one where he was on early and he had his shirt off. That was the first time he was on, so that was good. And then he didn't show up for a long time. He thought I don't know. He just, for some reason, he thought that I didn't want him on because he had his shirt off. But anyways, he came on again plenty of times, sometimes without his webcam on, sometimes with his webcam. was great talking to him. He just had so much information. Just shooting the shit is great. And I'd see him on Twitter just archiving just a bunch of tweets and a bunch of videos and things like that. And it might be good to explore a lot of that stuff. Anyways, if anyone has any information, please let me know. I would like to do something, and maybe something to help his family or something like that. Maybe that's what my my Patreon money could go. I haven't spent anything on my Patreon except for donating it to Susie Dawson via Bitcoin, and also whatever I have in there still, maybe I could donate in tribute to Tech Move and his family. All right, so continuing on. So that one is Dr. Kary Mullis on HIV. Interesting. Now let's go on and talk about, let's see, this one actually. This one should be interesting. 14 minutes long.
And it's exciting, but it's rocks in the road in a sense. It's definitely not what people, when they're first making the atomic bomb, for instance, they didn't know about leptons. They didn't know about tauons. They didn't know about any of that stuff. They certainly didn't know about dark matter, or they probably made a bigger bomb. I mean, nobody really knows about dark matter. Dark matter is a myth, okay? And now there's a lot more of them that are closer to home and that are likely to cost you a lot of money. And we ought to keep all that stuff in mind. Global warming. This is one of those cool things where there is not a shred of evidence. And I'm not lying to you. I've been studying this for a long time. I've read a lot of books about it. I've read a lot of the research papers. There isn't a shred of evidence that human beings have had any effect on this planet other than just billboards. I mean, we put out a lot of billboards and buildings and stuff. We haven't affected the climate. And the CO2 has such a tiny effect. Even the CO2 that's there, the bulk of which isn't our problem, it's always there. And the guys that are now running that, like the people that got in trouble at the Hadley Center, which is like the University of East Anglia in England, that got their emails all published, and some of them were kind of embarrassing. Those guys, they're like computer jocks. They're not climatologists. And in my opinion, climate is something that didn't start in 1900. If you want to know about climate and climate change, then you need to know things like when was the Eocene and what was the weather like. The Eocene was like about 40 million years ago, and the planet was pretty much trees. There were gymnosperms because the angiosperms hadn't happened yet, but there were trees from pole to pole. And it was a fairly temperate time, and the CO2 levels, and we know this all from proxy measurements and stuff, but they're pretty decent measurements, were 2,700 parts per million. That they're now 340, which is a little higher than 270, which is what they were historically before we started supposedly polluting the atmosphere. But there's a big difference between 340 and 2,700. And until people can say, how the hell did we come, and it was a temperate, it was fairly decent weather all the way around the world. Nobody understands that. Nobody understands how that moved from the Eocene to the Miocene to the Pliocene to the Pleistocene. All those names that you've maybe heard about refer to long periods in geological history where we have evidence that there was this and then there was that and then there was this. We don't have any evidence. We don't have any real ideas. How did it change? Why did the Eocene go away? Why was it replaced by the Miocene? And in my opinion, until you can start looking back at those things with all the data we have on them and say, here's what happened, because it certainly wasn't people. I mean, during the Miocene, there weren't any apes even. There weren't any mammals, really, to speak of. I mean, there were mammals, but there weren't any primates. And there wasn't a lot of CO2 being made by cars. And like, it didn't happen because of CO2. It probably had something to do with the fact that the Earth, in its orbit, is not exactly always pointed in the same direction. It's precessing around its poles. It's nutating around that, meaning it's accelerating and decelerating of that precession. It's pointing in all different directions over long periods of time that can actually be, you can predict them. I mean, they're not like random things. It's just like, yeah, it's a big top, and it's affected by all these other planets and stuff. And you should be able to take those things and make some sense out of them in terms of climatology. And somebody named Milankovitch did that years and years ago. He said, yeah, it should change. It is not, the natural state of the Earth is not that it's 69 degrees all the time in San Diego. That's just lately. It's not the state, the nature of the beast is that it undergoes fairly, we're not sure why, but fairly catastrophic changes from time to time. Sometimes they're quite uncomfortable for people, and species go extinct and others become like we did during the what we call the Holocene, or the last couple of million years. We became quite successful as a species because the climate was changing rapidly, and we were able to adapt to it. And that's the natural state of things here. You know, and it isn't because of us that it happened, it's because it happened that we're here. And it's really silly for people to walk around saying, save the Earth, you know, from us. Like we're like the moss that grows on the rocks here. We're not a very big part of it. We really aren't. We've overblown our presence here. And that is a foolish paradigm that we have allowed to sort of permeate in a whole field. And all the real climatologists have been replaced by these guys that write global circulation models that say, if this happens, then the temperature will go up by 5 degrees within the next. They usually give themselves a good little margin of error there. By the time I'm dead, the temperature will have gone up 4 degrees or something. And that will cause a big problem in terms of rice production and all that stuff. And these guys are just sitting there with their little computers, and they're doing all that stuff, and they don't really know very much about climatology, in my opinion. And climatology has become a kind of a joke. The people that are real climatologists do think about things like all the global epochs that the Earth has gone through in our way of looking at it. But the guys that are getting the headlines and stuff, and that are meeting in Copenhagen and deciding that everybody's got to stop cooking over sterno stoves in Africa or whatever. I mean, those people don't know nothing. They really don't. And if you read it, it's boring. It's clearly not made for you to understand. They have so many acronyms in the papers, like in Science and Nature. You know, every time they use a phrase, they immediately reduce it to 4 letters or whatever, and it makes it hard for a non-specialist to understand what they're talking about. You have to go back and forth and back and forth. What the hell does this stand for? What does this mean? Why don't they just write it? Ink is not that expensive. And it's just, it makes it hard for someone who's a non-specialist to really understand what those things are. And this is in magazines like Science and Nature that are really written, supposedly, for the non-specialist, scientifically trained person. And in my opinion, all that stuff should get out of there. It makes them talk to themselves, basically, rather than to other people. And then they start having these big, you know, then they talk to people like Al Gore and they say, hey Al, here's a great way for you to make money now that you're not the vice president. And they're all doing it in, you know, like it's for the Earth. Save the Earth from people, you know. And by the way, every species that is supposed to be here is. We don't need any new ones, and we don't want to lose any old ones. Let's stop evolution. Let's just quit it, because it was a bad idea, you know? It was a really bad idea that things should go extinct. You know, anything that's fuzzy, particularly, you don't want it to go extinct. That's a paradigm. It's almost a paradigm that things should not go extinct. And that if they do, it's our fault. You know, it's something we did. And it's really not that hard for people with a good little imagination and some terrible guilt. I don't know where that came from, except maybe it's because of the decline of a lot of people's religious faith has kind of dropped off a little bit, and they have a sort of feeling that they're bad or something. I'm not sure what it is. I know I'm not causing climate change. I mean, when I'm riding my bicycle, I'm blowing out a little CO2, and there's probably somebody with a satellite watching me. You know, the IPCC is always checking you out, and they're going to say, you're polluting, and I'm just breathing. That's the way, that's what science is about, though. I mean, really down at the bottom of it, any little field of science is there's some point where you really don't know for sure anything. You don't know. You make it up, and you keep working to prove that it's not true. But I mean, that's all you can do is finally prove that it's not true. You can't ever really prove something is true, because you might be missing the other 95% of the universe that sort of said, no, that wasn't actually true. That was just a little fluke. I'll talk about some more things here. I'm going to talk eventually, I think, about what I'm doing for real. Because I'm working on something that's much more down to earth than all that stuff. But all that stuff, the reason I love it is it is down to earth. It really is the guts of what we call modern science, and what science has been really since about the 17th century. There's around in there that we stopped using scholastic sources to figure out things. We started using empirical methods. We said, if I want to teach you something about science, I don't hand you a book that's all musty and say, read this and then you'll know. I say, look at this thing. This is an experiment I can do. And you can do it too. I have to give you the ways to do it. There's no smoke, no mirrors. It's all real. And it is because of that change that happened 350 years ago, maybe, that everyone in this room basically has got something. And even with them, you've turned them all off. But you've got things that kings in the 17th century would have probably gone to war for. I've studied that longer than you've been alive.
Yeah,
okay? And I know all about it. I know where you're getting your information.
In all due respect, you're a chemist, not a climatologist.
Wait a minute.
You're just a chemist.
No, I'm not just a chemist. I am not just a chemist. In fact, right now I'm an infectious disease guy, but you are just a little boy, and you haven't done your homework.
Well, how many climate papers have you published?
What's that?
How many climate papers have you published?
I haven't published any climate papers, but I'm in touch with a lot of people who have written books about it, and you know what?
He's right, you're not a climate scientist.
That doesn't mean anything.
It means what?
A scientist doesn't have to be a specialist.
Really? Are you not qualified to talk about climate?
Quite.
Respectfully, you are.
I'm qualified to talk about climatology.
Have you published it?
What? You don't have to publish.
Have you published it?
I don't want to get in a fight with you, sir, but I will.
You're telling my son.
And your son is too small.
One more question.
Yeah. Do you think that science does a better job at disproving its fables, if you will, than the rest of humankind's institutions, whether it's education or religion or politics or the notion of nation states or whatever?
Absolutely. It's set out, and in fact I have the answer to that written down somewhere. Of all the institutions on the planet, science is the one where that's set in, and that's part of the deal. If you can come up with something that disproves something that is thought of as being true, that's welcomed by other science. I mean, the guy whose idea it was isn't always so happy about it, but that's the way the system works, and that you get rewarded for that, and that's how it advances. It's when you show that a paradigm is no longer true, it opens up a whole new ball game, which is how science works. It's why I like it. You're not supposed to be hard-headed in science. You're supposed to be ready for the things that you really believe in to turn out to not be true, and you're supposed to enjoy that. You know?
Thank you. Let's have a thanks for our speaker.
All right, so that was pretty good. I agreed with a lot of what he said. The guy who questioned him that he couldn't talk about climatology because he didn't have any research papers on it, even though obviously he's well studied on climatology. It would be like, so the premise that you have to be an authority, you have to have some type of certificate or credentials to back up what you're talking about, to talk about it. It's just stupid. Just stupid. Look, I have no credentials. I've got no research papers. I've got nothing. But I could do science. I could run experiments. I could talk about technology all day, every day. And hey, you could come on and you can even have a conversation about me with technology. And if you have credentials, great. Maybe that's something I could learn. But you know what? I'm pretty sure there's a lot that I could tell you that you probably don't know. And just because I don't have any credentials, I don't have any research papers on it, I don't have anything written in some book that's taught to schools, doesn't mean I don't know anything about it. And you can come on, we can have a conversation. Let's see who knows more. I'm telling you, this high school diploma guy, that's all I got. And if I know more about technology than you do, when you've got some prestigious research letter on some technology, maybe you've got a white paper somewhere, school me on technology, please. Okay, I'm going to show a tech talk. I need to call somebody, and let me go ahead and show the tech talk. Here it is. Sons of Sputnik, Kary Mullis at TEDx Orange Coast. I'm probably going to miss the beginning of it. So hopefully I can catch up.
I've been a chemist most of my life. And chemists are smelly. You know, we as a culture have pretty much rejected them. We don't want any chemicals in our food. We don't want any chemicals anywhere except in our oil. And we maybe would rather have that not have chemicals in it. So chemists are, they've been pretty much downgraded in our society. So the beautiful minds are physicists and mathematicians and, you know, but not chemists. And I'm just going to talk about, I'm not going to talk about what I'm doing right now. I'm going to talk about something that I did. There was a lot of discussion between me and my wife as to what I would talk about, because if I talk about the invention of PCR, which is an interesting story, it's just too complicated to explain to an audience that you can't see, which I can't see you guys. And what isn't that complicated is my first experiences with a technical kind of a thing. The kind of thing that I was later going to learn was the way things worked when I finally went to Georgia Tech. And I said, well, that's engineering and stuff. But I already knew that as a 13-year-old. And I've often wondered about how the hell did I know how to, I mean, that if you wanted to find something out, the best way to do it was not to look it up in a book, but to do an experiment, and you could do it in your backyard kind of thing. So this whole process, I had never figured out how come I knew that at 13, but I did. And I wanted to design a rocket. Most 13-year-old boys back then, it was in the 50s, wanted to do that. They wanted it to make a certain noise when it took off, which was not a bang, like a boom, because the kind of stuff that they entrusted you with in the amateur rocketry guides and stuff it was like zinc, sulfur, various fuels, but they exploded and the rocket would go up end over end, and it was kind of stupid looking compared to the Cape Canaveral rockets, which went like that, and it was like we wanted that effect, and I thought you don't get that and we wanted it actually to be comfortable for a little frog because we knew that frogs had aspirations for space travel, and they were always acting like it at any rate. And it needed, the specification, it needed to fit inside of those little canisters that they sold you film in back then. When people used film, these little silver cans that you screw the top down, and that needed to be able to be stuck in the top of the rocket. And it needed to have some kind of padding to make it not uncomfortable for the little frog, and also to keep it from being hot. So there was a whole lot of considerations in the design, but all of them are things that I did assiduously, did experiments to see if they work, you know. We did, and we had a book. See, it was from Fort Sill, Oklahoma. There was a missile base there, and they provided young amateur rocketeers with a little book, which was pretty much worthless because they were worried about telling you anything that might blow your head off. And like that included almost anything that was going to make a good rocket fuel had that potential. But it did, the way it told you what we really needed to know was this one paragraph near the end that one of my friends, Buzz Wilson, who has just sent me that book recently, and it says, "Do not ever heat a mixture of sugar and potassium perchlorate." And I thought, and at the time when I read that, I said, why the hell would anybody want to do that? Why sugar? You know, and the druggist up the street, which is back in the 50s, late 50s, remember the Russians had put a satellite up, the Sputnik thing, and we were desperate to catch up. And little boys making rockets was actually considered patriotic. It was like, you weren't like some little kid that was going to blow the neighborhood up. You could set them off in your own yard. And this is, I mean, so, and the druggist in our neighborhood would, you know, I asked him, I said, "Do you have any potassium perchlorate?" And he said, "No." He said, "We've got potassium nitrate." And I said, "That would probably do it, you know." And so I knew a little chemistry at 13, but I knew that was an oxidizing thing like potassium perchlorate. Wasn't quite as active, but I thought, and why would you heat a mixture of it? You know, what would that do? So going back, I don't know why the spirit of Isaac Newton was hanging around my house, but I knew that if you want to find something out, you don't look it up in a book, you do it. You do an experiment. So the first thing I had to deal with is what proportion of potassium nitrate to sugar would make this thing not something you'd want to heat, you know? And so I made 10 little piles in my driveway of potassium nitrate and sugar at 10 different ratios, and lit them on fire and watched them, because I knew what you want from a rocket fuel is you want something that burns rapidly and turns the solid of the fuel into gas. You don't want any residue, because that would mean it's not sufficient. I mean, an efficient rocket fuel would be 100% turned into a gaseous state, and it would happen quickly, and it would cause some heat. And so I looked at the little piles burning. I said, there. 50-50 by volume. That was lucky, because it meant when you're mixing the stuff up, it turns out that's 60-40 by weight, but by volume, which was easier for me to deal with, it was 50-50. And so I said, all right, what happens now when you heat it? And what are they talking about, what you're not supposed to do there? And I thought, oh, you know what you're supposed to, probably you would heat it because it would make a more intimate mixture out of those two things. You don't want to explode it right there before you put it in the rocket. But it would be nice if they were very, very well mixed. And if you heated it to the point where the sugar melted, which sugar will do, they call it caramelizing, it would mix the two ingredients thoroughly. And it turned out by just the good fortune of this this particular mixture was that it would melt, and then it would set back up as a nice hardened solid that was it would burn like a bat. It was like, whereas the powder would just go, the little pieces of this, once the solid was fused again, it was like solid, just a little ball of it would dance around when you lit it on fire. And I thought, that is a rocket fuel. And that will get a frog into space. And so now, and the beauty of Columbia, South Carolina in the late 50s, in light of the Soviet advance in space, was that everybody that would these days try to put you in jail for messing with that kind of stuff was happy to help you out. Like the guy at the hardware store would sell us dynamite fuse, you know, 100 feet of dynamite fuse at a decent price, and the druggist, I said, we need this in larger quantities, the potassium nitrate. So he started buying pound jars of potassium nitrate. And we started doing some really interesting, at first we were just doing experiments where we'd mix it, just do the chemistry part of it, see what was the best combination of, the best sort of conditions. And then we started to make the rockets. And the first ones we made were they were little, things about this big, aluminum tubes, and we graduated after a while to big ones. They were about 4 feet tall, and they were 1.25 inches in diameter, and they were made out. We decided that something heavier than aluminum would make a better rocket, because what we wanted is it to be stable. We did not want it to flip around and around as it went up. We wanted it to have inertia. And the fins that we welded, we didn't weld them, we spot welded them, is what we did onto the bottom, which we slowly, meticulously cut the damn things out of 1/8-inch steel. And that was a long, hard process. And we had to do it often because sometimes they crashed. But we made nice fins. I studied the physics as it was. In one of the books I had, it talked about the fact that the nozzle, you don't just punch a hole in the bottom of a rocket. If you want it to break the sound barrier, you have to make make a funnel, make a nozzle at the bottom, which has an inward, like a 60-degree inward going phase, then a section that's about the size of a pencil. Fortunately, because we could make it we were making this out of a plaster of Paris that had asbestos in it, and we could make the nozzle, and so it's supposed to come in at 60 degrees and go out at 30, and that's supposed to allow it somehow to break. It didn't explain to me why that would break the sound barrier, but I didn't even know what the sound barrier was exactly, except that the jets did it. The jets flying over our house, we could hear when they were going faster than the sound. And it sounded exciting too, So we made the nozzle. This was in the summer. We had lots of time to kill, so we could work on this all day long. And my mother was a dear lady who somehow had the idea that the only danger that we were ever in from doing this stuff was to blow our eyes out. So she would be watching out the upstairs window, like, now don't you boys blow your eyes out, But I figured, well, as long as we don't blow our eyes out, it's okay if we burn down a tree, which in one time when you were making this fuel, you'd have to melt the potassium nitrate and sugar together in a little pot over a charcoal stove out. We did outside, which is a good idea, because we could have done it in the house and we'd have had a real problem. But we discovered that while you were heating the fuel at the beginning, once you'd mixed it together before you put it in the rocket, when you were heating it, you could get, you had to stir it quite well. In fact, we had to make a little wooden spoon with a very flat front. I mean, you had to saw off basically a normal wooden spoon so that when you scrape the bottom of the pot, it would not leave any little pieces of the fuel, because we discovered quickly that if it ever, while it's melting, you have to do it slowly. If it ever gets red looking, or these little red places forming in it, get the hell out of there. And it's like, because it will go up by itself. And so that, there was little things like that. We're observing what we were doing and taking notes. And it's like, see, once you had the rocket built, then you'd pour the fuel in it. And the first couple of times we did it, we just poured it in, let it set up. We'd put the fuse in first before at the bottom, so it was attached. It would get stuck to the fuel. And they made a lot of smoke, and they did burn. And sometimes they would lift off a little bit, not really what we wanted. And what I started thinking, and you know, I can't figure out where all these things came from in my head, because, I mean, I knew about geometry. I didn't know differential calculus at all. I didn't think of what is the rate at which this is burning. But I realized somehow intuitively that if while the fuel was getting fused, when it was still a liquid, it was down in the tube that you'd pour it in. If you pushed a dowel, like a little wooden dowel, about say 3/8 of an inch wide, down the thing and turned it while the fuel was setting up, you'd end up with a hole going all the way through the rocket from the bottom to the top. And you could put a piece of balsa wood, like a little circle of balsa wood on top of that, at the very top of it, and pour another 5 or 6 inches of fuel on that to plug the top. So now you have, when you light this thing, the fuse, the fire goes from inside to the outside rather than up the tube, which vastly increases the rate of combustion. Because, I mean, later on I realized, okay, the differential it's the radius growing larger, and it makes the perfect thing. You don't have to have a pump that pumps fuel in like you get the same effect in that it goes whoosh, because as it's going up, as it's burning a bigger and bigger area as it goes up, as it does its little burning thing. And it made it was a very spectacular kind of a thing. And the first person, the official person to watch it, was a cop. And because at first when we started, we were doing it in our backyard, and we had neighbors. And apparently one of them notified the local constabulary that there was somebody setting off rockets that could fall on their house, which we had taken that into account. We knew that we didn't want to fire it toward anything, but we were sitting out in the backyard we had just about to light the fuse, and this cop just sort of wandered up and he was looking at it. And this is the nature of it's like these days, that would get you arrested quickly. We'd have been in handcuffs, No, it wasn't that way then. It was patriotic, what we were doing. We were trying to catch up with the Russians. And so the cop just sort of, he looked at it, and the guy, Jimmy Papadil was his name, one of my friends who was lighting the fuse, wasn't facing toward where the cop was coming from. We were sitting back away watching, and we saw him, and we said, Jimmy, no, don't. And he didn't understand why, and he went ahead and lit the fuse. And the cop just sort of watched it, and this time it went, it was a nice, fairly good, that was when we were still using the aluminum, and it wasn't quite as impressive as later. But the cop was impressed, and it went up way over the houses and everything. And so he kind of encouraged us to say, doesn't one of you have a driver's license? and you can drive this thing out of town. Because, you know, he explained to us that there was an abandoned sand pit about 10 miles outside of Columbia that he thought it would make a good rocket range. And so that was a very helpful cop. And so we did. And so as the rockets got bigger, and then the frogs got involved. We made the little chamber for the frogs and shielded it with all kind of stuff so that the frog would, at the very end, see, if you have the hole up through there, it builds up its pressure inside the tube, and then it starts burning through the plug, which is the fuel that's been poured into the very top of the rocket. And as soon as it gets through there, then it blows the pressure, whatever left pressure is left in the tube. It now blows out. That blows out the nose cone. That would like blow out there was between the nose cone and the frog, there was like a bunch of padding. You put like ground up balsa wood in there, and then on the top of right on the top of the frog's little chamber, to protect him from the heat, there'd be a bunch of this little asbestos kind of stuff ground up in there, and then it would have a little red parachute to bring him back, because the rocket would fall wherever it fell. And it usually would bury itself in the sand pit. By the time we got down to the sand pit, the rocket would fall and go all the way into the sand and just leave the fins kind of sticking out. And if we were lucky, they didn't get bent, because we could use it again. So that actually put a frog up. What I calculated, I had this little, I said, how do we know how far this is going? And so we could measure how far it was from where we were standing with our little hard hats on, by the way. And we did not worry about blowing our eyes out by then, because my mother was back home, not in the window watching us. And so we thought that would be silly to wear safety glasses or something like that. And because we were going to be some little distance from this, because we had the luxury of dynamite fuse. We estimated the height of the thing by saying, when you can see the red parachute, because the thing actually goes out of sight, and you see the red parachute, we'll know how high that is if we have this little protractor attached to a pointer on a little tripod, which we had made. So you point it up and say, okay, there's where I saw the thing the first time, assuming that it's right above where it took off. This is how you can do it with trigonometry. You can determine how high the thing went. And I said, when I see it, it's 2 miles high. And Buzz, one of my friends, Buzz, his dad was a pilot. He had a little Cessna. And he said, you know, that thing, you don't send something up 2 miles up there. And I said, yeah, I think that's when I see it. I don't know how high it goes, but when I first see it, I've measured it a couple of times now. It's about 2 miles high. So he flew over our sand pit one day, a little too low for safety, because he didn't realize this thing was going to go past him at a rapid clip. So we don't know if it went 2.5 or 3 miles, but it passed him at 2. And it was, and the frog, miraculously, the frog survived. I mean, the very first, one time the frog didn't survive, but the pouring concrete, you a lot of times stick these little rods in it, and they have a name. Yeah, rebar. We had that. It was about 20 feet long, and it was stuck in the sand, and it had the direction that the rocket was supposed to. Because, you know, when it first takes off, the fins won't do it any good. So this would give it about 20 feet to get moving to the point where the fins could keep the back of the rocket down, and it was like. Now, it was a really cute little system. It was really, and here's these little boys doing it. You know, I look back at it and I think, Jesus Christ, you know, we were doing this when I was about 14. We were really getting it to work. And who knows how high that frog went. We don't know how the Russians are doing, actually. But they can't be doing much better. It's like their satellite didn't have a frog in it. But it was quite a way to sort of be. It was a fun way to spend the summer, and it was like it sort of reinforced these feelings that I already had about how you do science. I mean, that you experiment, that you try everything that might fail or whatever. You do as many little experiments on the ground before you ever put the frog in there. But we really enjoyed it, and once we moved out of the neighborhood out to the sand pit, then there were some people that lived near the sand pit that one time they got a little irritated because it landed in the pine trees and it started a little fire. But most people, I don't think they cared. It turned out we were in the flight pattern from Columbia Airport, which was not, there weren't enough planes taken off to realize that until this one time. I think that's enough.
Yeah, he kind of rambled on about, but that kind of give you a sense of just the shenanigans of him as a kid and making, I think what they call them, sugar bombs, sugar rockets. It's potassium nitrate and sugar. That's it. I think it's a 3:2 ratio, maybe. I could be wrong, but yeah. Using trigonometry to measure how high exactly went. That's this guy. He's pretty smart. And then you hear, oh, he's a conspiracy theorist. You're like, click, click, click. How do I turn this thing off? This guy's crazy. No, not so much. All right, let's listen to some other things, because I mean that just is more of a, gives you an idea of more insight into him. Really, it's just a person just speaking. And a big thing where most people talk about really important things in TED Talks, seemingly. All right, let's see. Now I want to start getting into a little bit of nitty-gritty stuff. Whatever that means. So let's look and see. Okay, there's the myth about age, why quit HIV. Like HIV's been made, blah blah blah. Fireside chat, that would be interesting. I wonder what that's about. The conversation between Google VP of Engineering, Alan Eustace. Ooh, I wonder what that would be. Kary Mullis, what should we really worry about? You know, that's a good one. There's corporate greed and AIDS, part 1. Interesting. Let's look at this one. What we should really worry about.
Astronomical bodies in our solar system, like the moon and Mars, and they would see very clearly there that we are not doing shit, but that the universe around us is full of bodies like the Shoemaker-Levy comets that ran into Jupiter, and that we ought to be really worried about that. Not about what our fellow man is doing, but we should be putting up an umbrella of some kind to protect us from that, because we have reached that level of complexity in our technical capability. It would not be beyond it right now if we were to concentrate very heavily on that. It would give a mission to the space people, the NASA kind of people. It's like, this is what we're here for, is to set up the places to watch for that from and the solutions to it. What do you do when you see something 3 kilometers in diameter heading to Earth, 17,000 miles an hour, and it's going to be here in a month? What do we do? Right now we watch it on television, and nothing else. There's very little else to do. We should have built by now the ability to deal with it. I mean, we've got that capability, right? We've got plenty of evidence that it happens. We've got a lot more evidence than we need. I mean, you just have to see 1 or 2 holes in the ground that are huge to know it's happened here in not not necessarily historical time, although something really bad could have happened in the last 2,000 years that we don't really have a good, we don't have really good records of. It could have wiped out a lot of the Earth. And now we've got a very fragile film of civilization that would be really badly disrupted by something that wouldn't even have to be like 65 million years ago, that kind of thing. It could be something like a kilometer wide. It's landing anywhere on this planet. If it's in the ocean somewhere, half the people in the world would drown. I mean, half of the people in the world are probably living within a couple of hundred meters of sea level, right? And something that was a kilometer wide that smashed in the ocean would cause a tidal wave that would go all around the world. And we're just sitting here blithely, thinking that we, by our CO2 emissions or something like that, in 100 or 200 years, are going to choke ourselves to death or whatever we're going to do. And we're absolutely out of our minds. I mean, we could think, no, it's not going to be us. I mean, that'd be an inconvenient thing to have the temperature go up a little bit or go down a little bit. But we don't really have much control over that, probably. That's all very theoretical. This other stuff is not. This is real. I mean, you look at the surface of the moon and you can say, things have been flying around here for a long time. You look at what happened to Jupiter just 2 years ago, right? That's real. We saw that. We have pictures of that. We said, that's going on. And there's good reason to believe that it's going on everywhere all the time. There's not a whole lot of, interstellar traders here for some reason. Right. We're not doing a lot of, there's not a lot of visitors from other planets selling us stuff, right? I mean, you would think that they'd be here. There's nowhere on the Earth that you can't buy all kinds of items from other countries, right? But there's nowhere on the Earth that you can buy something from another planet. They're not here. Why not? The universe must be full of planets that have evolved life, right? Maybe they don't have as much. Maybe this is an exception, and we've just been lucky that nothing's landed here big in a long time. And so we've had time to develop from, a couple of million years of peaceful, sort of, fairly decent weather and no really huge thing from space. But maybe it's more the exception than the rule. I mean, if we look around us, we should be able to make that connection. It is more the exception than the rule, because in our lifetime we saw it happen on Jupiter already. And if we look at the moon, the surface of the moon, we say, well, damn thing's been smashed all to pieces. And if you start looking for those like the debris from them around the Earth, you find them. So it isn't a trivial thing. And for some reason, it's something we're completely just walking around like we're sleepwalking in a sense. We're saying, we are at that point in our development in civilization where we could do something about it, but we don't. We don't have the, somehow our imagination will not go a little further than just, it's easy. A lot of people are totally concerned about the future of the Earth, right? But they're for the wrong reasons. They're not seeing that, it could get a little hotter, or maybe we would cause the temperature to go up or down or whatever. That's possible, but that would be an inconvenience compared to all of Belgium being underwater for a few minutes. It'd just be ridiculous what would happen if something a kilometer wide landed in the Atlantic Ocean. Goodbye to Europe.
But in a way, it's like we think that we have control about the same infectious diseases, but there is no actually control.
Well, we don't either. I know, but even something like another terrible epidemic of the flu wouldn't be nearly as destructive as something that would. I mean, a bigger thing, something like 3 kilometers or 5 kilometers, would destroy civilization completely. There would be unlikely that anybody would live through it. I mean, that is real, and it is there, and people are, for some reason, sleepwalking, and they're not seeing that, because we are right now, at first time in our history, as far as we know of, capable of doing something about that. But we're not. We're not spending very much money even looking for those things. We're spending $10, $25 million maybe, specifically looking for Earth crossing orbit things that are coming past. There's a lot of them. But so far, nobody's found that one or two, 3 kilometer wide thing that's actually going to hit us. But it's there. It's got our number on it already. It's on its way. And it's just a matter of time, you know, and who's looking for it? Well, there's a few people that are looking for it frantically, you know. I mean, some people have put some money into it, but not on a big scale. Not like we put in, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars to look for the Higgs boson, right? Some completely theoretical thing that only 10 people on the planet understand why we would want to know about it. You know, and they would care. It would be on the front page of the paper just one day. You know, we put a lot of money into that. We should put that money into something like a network of orbiting telescopes that are watching, that are cataloging everything in the solar system that could possibly, because, you know, some little asteroid one day is going to go around another one and bang, it's on an orbit right directly toward the Earth, and we can watch it, and we can cry about it, you know, and we will be able to see it on television right up to the moment that it hits, but we'll feel stupid. Tell your readers that somebody ought to do something. Some idiot like you know, one guy like Gates, instead of trying to cure malaria, you know, there's all this big Gates challenge thing. He could take care of that. You know, he could start something. And NASA could say, that's why we're here. It's not just for the thrill of going into space. We have to do this. Otherwise, we are not going to see the distant future. You know, we're never going to get out of here if we don't protect ourselves here until we start flying around to other places. And that apparently doesn't happen too often to a civilization because we haven't seen any evidence of that. I mean, I don't go for those arguments about, well, it's just too far away and nobody'd be interested, because I'm sure they would be. You know, there's just not that many people out there. And it might be that they're all as stupid as we are. You know, you go right through this, you only have so many millions of years, and then that happens again, and you start over again, right? And then it happens again, and then you start over again. Very few civilizations catch on that you have to. It isn't benign. There's something out there. And it's just a big piece of matter. And space is full of them. Okay.
I thought that was interesting. Yeah, we're not doing all the stuff that needs to be done. What are our great leaders? Great leaders, what an oxymoron. What are our leaders doing? What are people in NASA doing? Why are we spending so much money and time and research on things that really don't matter when we know we could do something of importance? Cataloging space, the stars, the planetary bodies, etc. I think that's a good idea, and we're not doing that. And plenty of people, hundreds of people that are in the 1% can afford to do that on their own. Save humanity, whatnot. No, that doesn't happen at all. Alright, now let's get into some nitty gritty. No more videos, at least none that I see yet. Let's go and look at some Wikipedia. I know everybody here loves Wikipedia, don't they? Alright. So, why is Kary Mullis a conspiracy theorist? No. Sorry. Alright. And let's do due diligence. You know, it says here, and we'll go to that. In his 1998 autobiography, Mullis expressed disagreement with the scientific evidence supporting climate change and ozone depletion, the evidence that HIV causes AIDS, and inserted his belief in astrology. Mullis claims climate change and the HIV/AIDS connection are due to a conspiracy of environmentalists, government agencies, and scientists attempting, man, I can't talk, to preserve their careers and earn money rather than scientific evidence. And that is referenced on number 8, dancing naked in the minefield. Well, I looked here and there really wasn't anything that refers to that, but I guess it's referencing his book, which will be an interesting read. I should try it sometime. But yeah, so that's Kary Mullis' thoughts. I'm pretty sure he doesn't. He probably goes, yeah, I'm okay with it. Just like me, I'm a conspiracy theorist. Because there are conspiracies. Here's one for you. AIDS heresies from maverick science to conspiracy theories. This is actually a CNN.com article. Wow. By Hashi Horvath. Sorry, it's hard to see because this is in September 15th, 1999. It's actually from WebMD. It says, I'll give you the skinny, although nearly all scientists believe that AIDS is caused by the human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, a small but vocal minority insists that there is no proof of this. Others say that they are indeed linked, but were deliberately created as a genocidal or biological warfare experiment. Evidence against these alternative theories is overwhelming, but because HIV and AIDS are still not fully understood, some people still believe them. How plausible is the renegade research? Here are the most prevalent of these theories and the explanations behind them. So, talking about Peter Duesberg, but we'll go ahead and move on over to AIDS in Africa. So in addition, Duesberg says that AIDS in Africa is caused by parasites, malnutrition, poor sanitization. To explain the fact that babies worldwide are born with AIDS, Duesberg asserts that the babies' mothers must have been long-term drug abusers. Such hypotheses have not endeared him to mainstream science, but Duesberg's views have still won support even from within the scientific community. Nobel Prize-winning chemist Kary Mullis has publicly supported Duesberg research. Now, how about that? Now, is that mind-blowing or not? HIV is caused by parasites, malnutrition, and poor sanitization. It's weird. That's weird. I haven't heard about this till now. Yes, Rainbow X, we are going to. I want to see if that's okay by run it by his sister Jill. We'll see. I think I want to compile the hundreds or thousands of hours of talk time we've had and finding the ones with Tech Move. I think I'll spend a day or two, probably 3 days, trying to find all those. I'll probably need other people's help. Okay. Does everybody remember Magic Johnson? Because I am a big, or was a big basketball buff. You talked to me like 3-4 years ago. Man, I could give you current statistics if you just asked. Anybody playing today, anybody playing 10 years ago, people playing back in the 80s. I would know about it. You know, people know so much about baseball statistics. Well, I was that for basketball. But anyway, Magic Johnson has been living with HIV for over 26, 27 years. Well, let's see. There's live science. How has Magic Johnson survived 20 years with HIV? I mean, shouldn't it? I guess most people will say, you know, he's a multi-millionaire. He's almost a billionaire. Of course he's going to survive. He has the money and the means to. Or, I don't know, is money and means, is that what it takes to survive a virus like HIV? Maybe they aren't telling us something. Sounds fishy, right? So in order to survive all these crazy big viruses that affect most of mankind, humankind. Sorry for those who are politically correct. Yeah, I don't care whether you are or not. I don't care about being politically correct, and you probably know that. All right. And over November 7th, 1991, Lakers point guard Earvin Magic Johnson shocked the world when he noticed that he had contracted HIV, the virus that causes AIDS. They say virus causes AIDS, but there's no research that confirms that. Did you know that? That's what Dr. Kary Mullis has been stating for, I'd say, over 2 decades. Or maybe almost 2 decades. Who knows? Yeah. So there's no link that supports this claim. HIV, the virus that causes AIDS. There's no medical or scientific journal or paperwork that supports this claim. But everyone believes it. Everyone thinks it's true. Anyone who thinks otherwise says, you're crazy, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're an idiot, you're a kook. Well, tell that to a Nobel Prize winning chemist who worked on HIV. You know more than this guy who won, oh my goodness. You know more than this guy? Let's go back to this. Here we go. We want to know more. Heck, it's right there. It's right there. So again, false claim there. But, you know, that's how it happens. People just announce and they don't dig deep. They say, hey, someone said it, so it's true. Hey, this person said it. Hey, it's true. Hey, look. These people say it is true. No, it's not. Well, I'm telling you one person who's saying it's not true. Dr. Kary Mullis. Oh, damn you. Stupid pop-ups. So why is Johnson still alive? Magic Johnson. The answer to Johnson's survival was far from magic. According to reports, he takes the same kind of drugs that are available to other HIV patients in the developed world and increasingly in impoverished nations, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Such a big problem. Let's see how big a HIV problem is. Looks like there's still quite a lot going on. So all these experts, mainstream experts with billions of trillions, I don't know how much money has been going into research for HIV/AIDS, but it's gotta be somewhere in the billions at least, if not in the trillions. With all this money that they're getting, all the money that they're getting for HIV/AIDS, and they still haven't found a cure. I think it's time for someone new in charge. Yeah. Anyways, I don't know what to say anymore. I don't really say it. I just let other people say it. People who are just have more credentials. I'll let them say it. I'm just here to show you it. And you're like, Ebon, you're crazy, you're a conspiracy theorist. Why are you saying these things? Like, I'm not saying these things. I'm showing you the people who are saying these things, and they're just not these nobodies in some basement somewhere making videos. some academic professor who won a Nobel Prize in chemistry saying these things. And why aren't you finding it? Why aren't you showing all these things? I mean, heck, if some guy in his basement can make videos, obviously you can. Yeah. Anyways, I think that's it. Not much tonight as far as discussions. It feels like having a Zoom teleconference thing isn't quite necessary. So much for discussions. It's a one-way talk, I guess. Anyway, I will probably be gaming for an hour. You know, I had to talk with Eric. Eric is a great friend. He's there for me. I'm gonna be there for him. And you know what? He needs to take a break, because it's doing this stuff is just it's a big weight. I'm telling you, you can't carry all the weight of the world on your own. You just can't. That's why we're in it together. That's why we gotta do things together. Some people leave, some people go away, some people never come back, some people do, whatever, you know. We just have to do whatever we can. Otherwise, we're not gonna do anything. Let's just go and watch these horrible movies they're putting out year after year. Why don't we just go out and vote for all these people who we hate because they keep doing things for greed and they're corrupt. It doesn't matter if you're left, right, Democrat, Republican, it's still the same. Since when have they done anything good for you? Probably not. Since when have they done anything good for the planet? Haven't. Since when have they done anything good for anything? Name anything and it's horrible. Food horrible, water horrible, air horrible. Well, that pretty much sums it up. Okay, so I am just gonna go and play a little game. And you know what's... Maybe it's necessary. I mean, I got like $6 playing for an hour and a half on Steemit, on DLive. Well, I do these videos for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I probably made 2 cents, if even that. So let's all play games until we die as a species. Aliens up there, or whoever, they're looking down at us and just going, man, what are these fools doing? What are these fools doing? They're killing themselves and they're like, yeah, I'm right. Look at how good we are. We are rulers of the universe. We can't even have clean air. We can't even drink clean water. Well, hopefully that didn't pressure too much. A lot of depressing news lately. And trying to help out with all the news that's going on that's horrible. Man, that's why I don't watch news anymore. I don't watch news. I don't even watch news in the independent media. Not if I don't have to. Well, alright. Time to play some games. Actually, I would rather not and actually fix up another setting. Because I've got another, I've been fixing up the basement. I would say it is 90% done, at least, for what I have here. So probably tomorrow I'll be able to fix it up. Anyways, I'll see you soon. We are gonna play more dungeon. Oh, it's not dungeon. Why am I saying dungeon? It's Rainbow Six Siege. Not PUBG. Gosh, Ryan. There are other games that I play, but it's not multiplayer anymore. At least if I try to, it's not good. I mean, even the computer that I'm using now, very, very fast computer, built from scratch. 6-core hexa-core overclocked to 4.6 gigahertz. GTX 1080 Ti overclocked. Yeah. And I still get these issues on Rainbow Six Siege. I think I fixed it. I tried something else. So what I did was, look, if you don't change anything, the symptoms are still going to be there. whatever problems you're having are still going to be there. So anything we want to do in this world, we have to do something, right? Because if you do nothing, nothing's going to change. Just, you can apply that to anything. So I'm applying that to technology. I'm applying that to my computer. So I changed a couple of things. I always change a couple of things, see if the result is different. If the result is different and it's fixed, you fixed it because you did something. It won't go away on its own. It's not like when you have a cold or flu or whatever, you know, that stuff will go away on its own. You don't need to see a doctor. Doctor only treats the symptoms, at least in the Western world. But on a computer, when a computer gets sick, does it get well by its own? No, it does not. All right, anyways, I don't know why I talk about this stuff. I'll see you guys in a few.